Hey, how's it going?
Hey, how are
Hey,
y'all?
morning.
Doing good.
Doing good too. More people here this time. That's good.
Most definitely. Don't know why I'm so blurry though, but
You're from the US. It's like the packages take longer to get from to us from you.
yeah. Or it's just this camera. The Opal I have a love-hate relationship with. So
Yeah.
yeah, sometimes it's fine, sometimes it wants to be blurry.
I mean, I can just like join you in being blurry.
Oh, there we go. Nice. I'll feel like we're wearing the wrong contacts or glasses or something.
So I believe there should be a Benji appearing at some point too, right?
I think so. He's marked as the host at least.
Yeah, or master of operation.
I did notice that the PRs weren't merged, so maybe he's not around. I'm not sure.
I can try to ping him on Discord.
I'm gonna try rejoining. Opal took away my camera feed. One sec.
I mean, he's offline in Discord. Um, but let's see what happens. Maybe any recent notes from him.
I mean, otherwise we can run through it with the four of us.
Let's wait until Cheryl is back for his camera.
Yeah, let me try one more time. I might have to quit Zoom. Sorry, it's still not showing up
Sure.
as a source. I'm so sorry.
Oh,
Oh,
there you
no
are.
worries. Man.
Oh, okay. Benji's answer is he's on vacation. Did he forget to cancel it? Um,
Okay. Um, yeah, I mean we can run through the points. Well, when
yeah,
Carol's back.
yeah. Seems like he's okay if we continue.
Okay.
All right, there we go. We're back. Thank you.
Oh my God, me trying to type on this ergonomic keyboard.
Awesome. All right.
One day I'll get it.
I don't think anyone of us is allowed to merge PRs, so we can't
That,
update the
that's
agenda
just.
for now.
I mean,
Um,
there's also like the agenda in the notes. Then we
yeah,
could
I
just
added it
like,
already.
yeah.
All your points are in there. So by being here, we all agree to the GraphQL code of conduct on the membership agreement and the participation guidelines. So um, let's all introduce ourselves in the order of Zoom. Hey, my name is Jovi, calling in from Belgium.
Hi, I'm Lance, calling in from Germany.
I'm Gerald, calling from Colorado, US.
Hey, I'm Phil. Sorry, I was getting a drink. Calling in from London. Working for Expo now.
Awesome. All right. let's just take collaborative notes. I put down all the agenda items. I just had one, which is call for reviews. Sadly, none of us have collaborator guide permissions, so we can't get approvals right now, but I'd appreciate any review of the process env changes, which Lens will talk about more in a bit. And mine are just for GraphQL 16 and the fragment arguments implementation of the spec.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to take a look at that. I didn't dive into fragment arguments yet.
All right. I think all three of the next ones are yours, Lens, so take it away.
Yeah, I'm sorry for taking over the agenda. The first one is we decided last time that we might consider bundling changes in GraphQL 17, which would be released before the current 17. So the idea was to do bundling changes soon to get through the double package hazard and to release the current 17 alphas as 18 alphas and get those bundling changes out sooner rather than later. This is, of course, just an idea, but in exploring that, Benji noted that he wasn't sure which of the exports are actually guaranteed documented exports from the GraphQL package. And we set out to find out which of the exports are actually currently being used by the community. The background for this is if we do these changes, they will probably introduce an exports field. And in the exports fields, we have to have every single possible allowed export from the package. So if we don't put a file in there, people can't directly import from it. And Benji's assumption back then was that it could be enough that we just import from the root of the GraphQL package. But a few libraries might need to change their imports. I've since been diving into that, and actually currently the package guarantees that you also can import from folders. That's documented in comments. But the individual files are not officially guaranteed. That said, I created this issue to collect all the libraries and where they import from. We brought that up with the GraphQL working group, and we pinged a few maintainers and tried to collect what has come up in the meantime, like what people wrote, like what they're importing from. And generally, all libraries that participated stated that they would even be okay if they would only be a GraphQL endpoint. Some of them asked for some things that are currently marked as internal to be exported and gave, in my eyes, pretty good reasons for that. And what comes up is that a lot of them import a lot of TypeScript types that we don't really export, like they import them directly from the files. And those types are actually, when I looked into them, are very simple. Like we have this object map type, which is just an alias for record, the TypeScript type record. And there's like a maybe type that's like type or null. So there could be discussion if we, like generally with this knowledge, if it's enough knowledge, if we want to wait for more input, there could be a decision on which of those we want to expose and which we don't want to expose. I've annotated all of them in the exploration PR. Or all of them up until like 3 days ago. I think nobody else posted.
I mean, it's been hard in general to get like feedback from the community. Maybe we should like use GitHub code search to just see some big libraries that could become victim of this.
Yeah, I've pinged the guild on this on the side, but I believe they didn't give too much feedback. So we might also need to poke them again. There's also like that question, if it's too necessary, given that we probably won't do the original suggestion of only having the GraphQL export, but at least those folder exports, because like I said, they are documented as part of the official API interface, and supporting them is not too much of a hassle. So it's probably also just okay to support them.
Quick note on that was, Yovi and I did some exploration of this a couple of years ago. I think it was end of 2021, where we're collecting a similar import map. And we found that even back then, with a few exceptions, the top level folders are generally what people use. The only thing we found is there's a couple of exports that basically broke, which now need to be forcefully imported from GraphQL itself, which already means that this has been broken in the past between majors, which kind of makes me think it's a non-issue. I don't think there's anything wrong with providing separate bundle steps for all the different folders, making sure that people can still import those. And I'm not too concerned about maintainers changing this for GraphQL 17, since people will have to go in, mark the new major version as supported, and update it anyway. What I've seen is that it's more concerning about libraries which are technically not maintained but still in use. None come to mind, but I suppose the more that's being done right now, the more likely it is that those will continue to work. But nothing really stands out. As soon as you go multiple levels deep in the import structure, it gets pretty hairy to kind of keep that working across major versions. So I think when we then went to create a replacement library for GraphQL, at least for the client side, we didn't have to bother with nested stuff. And I think for the initial exploration from around 3 years ago, we had an override map that we later on got rid of because GraphQL 16, if I remember correctly, already broke a bunch of the nested imports by moving a couple of things around.
Yeah, there's
it was
this
15, sorry. 16 had some more, but 15 did move some things around as well.
Yeah, there is a slight memory on my side that moving from GraphQL 15 to GraphQL 16 was kind of painful. And I like to find a nice middle ground where as many packages in the ecosystem can continue to work. The interesting thing is if people don't have, like if they have skip lib checks enabled, most of these really deep exports were TypeScript exports. So going through these, there were a few, but they all were essentially like accessing things that were explicitly marked as internal, and that's a different discussion if we want to make those requests essentially external. I'm honestly not really sure what the best next step here would be. I'm just reporting at this point.
No, I think when you're thinking of the maybe type and the object map type, I'm not sure you're thinking about it, but I'm thinking it's like they probably shouldn't be exposed. I haven't actually noticed if they are, but if they're exposed, that seems more like an accident than something that should be used by people. They're very simple, and obviously they're never going to change. The names, by definition, describe what they do and that they're not going to change. So it's just a further burden. So maybe the opposite is true. GraphQL 17 is an opportunity to either get rid of them or mark them as deprecated. But I think as long as there'll be a list of breaking changes, that's not too worrisome.
Yeah. Especially
Yeah, I
for
agree.
the type helpers, my thought was we're not a type library. Like there are libraries to import that stuff from, and GraphQL is probably not the right place. Sorry.
No, no worries. I completely agree. Like people shouldn't be importing types from like a deeply nested file in the GraphQL.js folder structure. Like,
Yeah, I agree as well.
So that said, what would be our idea of going forward here? My suggestion would be to leave this issue open, see what other people come up. Probably continue exploring that that bundling way, and the moment that hits an alpha and people start installing it, we will probably get more feedback, and then it's still an alpha and we could still take action on it, decide that we expose more things. With the folder exports, I would just keep them in. It's not a lot of work to keep them in, and they have been documented, so I don't see a lot of reason not to do that.
We're currently also not bundling, right? So that's separate discussion anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the next point on the agenda. Those two overlap just like it's hard to discuss one without the other.
Right. So what you need to move this forward is basically reviews, right?
Well, at this point, it's far enough that we could say we need a review of the, like, if that would be the next agenda step, like the bundling issue. I've opened a PR that introduces these changes. I think in my attempt of trying to fix something in the end, I dropped some of the export fields again. So I would probably go over that. I have 2 days off now, so start of next week, I would just put that PR on like requesting reviews. And then the question is what we do with that. Like, what do we do with that?
wait, do you well, do you see these as separate, like introducing bundling and limiting the exports, or do you want to see them as one?
They need to go hand in hand. Like they are essentially the same thing. I can share real quick and show what this is about. The main idea is to get around the dual package hazard. And this is lending some techniques from Underist, Mathieu Burszynski, I believe. And he has a pattern like this in his export fields. Essentially, you have the types with import and default. Like this is for CommonJS and this is for ESM. And then he has a modules field, which an MJS entry point, which is ESM. He has this default, which points to a CommonJS entry point. And this is the interesting one, this index.js.mjs. This just re-exports from the CommonJS entry point, because ESM can re-export CommonJS, but CommonJS cannot re-export ESM. So in a node environment, people will, in the end up with the same copy of GraphQL.js, even if it's imported via import and require, which oftentimes happens. These files are like auto-generated. They just look like this, and they just like re-export everything from directly next to them, like here. This is just the part of the bundling step now to generate this re-exporting file. And then I thought I had that like theoretically this is enough to get through the dual packaging hazard. Bundlers would still pick up the module entry point. So everything that goes through a bundler, through Webpack or something, would end up with an ESM build. And Node, on the other hand, would go through this import and default here. So Node would always end up with a common.js entry point. And theoretically, this is enough to beat the dual package hazard. Now, there's the thing that Vite sometimes acts like Node and sometimes like a bundler. So vtest, if you try to import GraphQL, will still give you 2 different copies. Before you had 3, now you're down to 2. So what I did here was add an additional exports condition that's like higher priority than the others. I called it vtest, but could be whatever. And vtest users would have to add that to the vtest configuration. And then Vite would take the first option and always only take common.js and never run into ESM or common.js. This is like a very horrible workaround, honestly. But there are tons of explanations by the Vite authors on why they sometimes act like a bundler and sometimes like Node.js. And we didn't find any other way of solving that. Like I chatted with Underest for quite a while about that. I can also show, oh gosh, I have too many tabs open. Yeah, here we have that issue, and then that issue. I mentioned the other issue. I'm sorry. Yeah, here. Here we have the comment. Yeah. So essentially, this is what a Vite configuration would look like. They would have to do this resolve, and then they would have to add an additional condition. We could also give this like the name, like dual module hazard workaround or whatever, to not call it vtest. But essentially, this changes nothing really about bundling. It's just doing the exports map and creates these wrapper files. That's all this whole pull request does.
A very specific concern I have is that the module condition is not an established standard. And I can also see why Vite specifically, and hence also Vitest, behave differently, because depending on how they approach these conditions, it is a condition. Sometimes they bundle dependencies, sometimes they don't, which creates the split. So I can see how that happened. Which brings me back to it that they're basically, yeah, they're conditions. So we have an alias file, which basically remaps all of this to go into the same module. And we have 3 conditions, ignoring the Vitest one. I suppose the types one currently has 2, which could also be 1, since we don't technically have any differences between declarations on CJS and ESM.
Their TypeScript will complain about that at some point. Like there's the tool from Andrew Branch, are the types wrong? And if you don't do that, it will already complain.
Which only matters
theoretically,
if we assume that
if we had
CommonJS will stay
no
alive.
default, yeah, but it's a good practice. The thing about module, or like, I'll say it the other way around. This pattern is established by very popular libraries. So Underest is maintaining Emotion, XState, Redux Saga, and about a dozen other libraries. And this is being used by all of those for at least 1 year now. So it's like the most stable pattern I've come across while looking at export conditions for the last 1.5 years. I don't know if there's anything we could do better except deciding that we only ship CommonJS and no ESM at all, which is probably not good because bundlers apparently profit from ESM builds very much.
The common basic amendment was, it's more towards the direction of, and this is not to disqualify the credibility of Vandarist or anyone else who applies this pattern. There are a lot of maintained packages with a combined download size that exceeds all of these packages combined, or GraphQL, or all GraphQL packages combined. And I don't see a world where everyone applies this pattern because we can't fix the ecosystem. Yovi and I were one of the first packages above, I don't know, insert arbitrary download number here that explored these changes when they came to Node.js and import conditions and dealing with things like Webpack being broken and not treating them correctly and finding workarounds for that. And obviously it's not a great situation to be in, that now years later we're still playing this game of trying to fix all of these edge conditions and edge cases. But I think there is a certain point when the complexity exceeds what is reasonable. And I think the reason why I'm bringing this up is even with this fixed, it cannot fix the dual package hazard by definition, because there can still be 2 installations and GraphQL.js will still complain about it because GraphQL.js relies on instances. In a perfect world, when we're bundling for client-side apps and we're using GraphQL, which should not really happen, but if we're bundling GraphQL.js, we can already manually make sure that there's only one version of GraphQL that's being used by aliasing it, which is a pretty common pattern, right? We want to avoid having duplicate installations. We can enforce that not only on the package manager level, but on the bundling level. However, if we're considering node tooling, or like, basically more like compile time tooling, where multiple installations of GraphQL may occur, the problem itself may not go away, because once we have multiple installations, we can still run into the same errors we run into today. So there is the general concern I have that we're basically trying to fix libraries that refuse to fix themselves. And that is something that well, I think your time could be better spent. Because if we're talking about instance of, for instance, we're basically getting rid of a whole host of problems that, even though there's duplication, people don't really care about in a CLI environment.
Yeah, I gotta be honest. My main concern is that right now it's impossible to test anything that uses more than one GraphQL related library in vtest. Like as soon as you install 2 or 3 dependencies, one of them will be CommonJS only and you completely crash. And there's no way around that. I believe that the instance of thing could also solve this probably. But I don't know where to start there. While with this bundling stuff, I'm pretty comfortable and I'm pretty sure like these are not a lot of changes actually, and they probably would fix the issue. And I have a feeling that the instance of discussion would take a few more months than this. So that's why I'm suggesting this.
That's fair, yeah. I mean, if it's already done working, then I suppose the time is also already spent, so that's good.
It was one afternoon, so that's not too bad. Also, and this probably goes into the next topic, the moment we have export fields, we can use the the development condition, and that would solve pretty much all questions around the next part with this type of process and process env and all of that.
Most bundlers don't accept that, right?
I mean, if some old bundlers don't accept it, they live with the problems that currently exist, and we find a solution for 16 and we just keep that. But all the modern bundlers that do support it will just never face the problem. So that's also something I'm kind of keen
Most
on.
supported with configuration. That's
Yeah.
the important part. So the adoption is still quite low, but I suppose it's a chicken egg problem. where if
Tools
no
like
package
Vite
implements it-
already apply the development condition. Last I checked.
Normally they only follow the Node spec, and Node doesn't support it.
I would have to look that
Maybe.
up again, but I'm pretty sure last time I checked, Vite did something with the development condition.
Although I suppose it's a problem where someone will have to go and I guess just do it. I suppose implementing in GraphQL could be good in the sense that it will encourage more bundlers to support it.
True.
I'm not opposed to just adding that, since I suppose once we add bundling, the cost of maintaining that difference is very low.
One question though, do we feel comfortable supporting that when runtimes like Dino or Node don't support it? Like using GraphQL without a bundler becomes impossible then.
They
No,
technically do support it, right? Like you can specify, just like you can pass node env production to node, you can alter like you can add import conditions. So technically, I suppose it can be used.
So the idea was that either there's a development condition, and if that exists, it goes into development, otherwise it gets production. Or we have a development condition and a production condition, and if neither of those gets picked up, the current solution keeps existing. So this would be purely additive and not replace something existing completely. But it would be more like if you have an environment that supports it, you're fine, you're good. And on top of that, what Phil said, you can always start node minus condition development. And at that moment, you will always get it. As for Dino, we have a completely different build and a completely different packaging and bundling process that I haven't touched and I have no idea about. So that would probably just stay the way it is. I don't know about other runtimes like Bun, though.
Yeah, I mean, if that's it, if no one else has points, I think you've covered it. Or do you want to say more to that point?
I think at this point I would just like finish that PR, open it for reviews. If there are more concerns, we can all share them there. This was more like I wanted to show like, hey, this is kind of working. We have a way we could go. And then we see if anybody comes up in concerns within the next month, and then we can still talk about more next meeting, I guess.
Yeah, fair enough. Awesome.
And then that's the dreaded point, right? The extremely confusing and complicated process env, node env thingy. And it
I
moves it.
suppose I've already added so much. I can add another 2 cents, which is just whatever minifier support and can reasonably work in all runtimes is good as the default. There will always have to be a production bundle if it should be compiled in a certain way, which would then be exposed, for instance, using the exports conditions. The problem before was just like so many libraries, it's almost become a standard to ship production bundles that people can then use in case their minifier doesn't do the job. It's so common, there's almost no need to question that. I suppose export conditions are just an improvement on that. But I suppose the only thing that's important is making sure that default development bundle, if it presumably continues using these conditions, doesn't create a condition that cannot be minified away in most common setups. By most common setups, I mean minifiers and default settings in most bundlers. Further expanding, I suppose it would be bad if we created something that can never be minified away by most minifiers, rather than something that might just not be minified away by some of them.
Yeah. So we have this open issue. I think we had a lot of long discussion in there. The way I see what's in that issue, we have essentially the option that I still kind of prefer, which is it would need configuration to minify it, but it's possible with every bundler to at least do the configuration. Or the other way around, reverting everything. The only thing that I'm very concerned about is adding any kind of type of process check, because that will mean that every bundler will need configuration and some bundlers cannot be configured, which is probably
There's
the
only
worst
one.
of both worlds.
There's only one, right?
Yeah, but that's like the most used one at this point.
Which one's that?
ESBuild.
ESBuild. It's
Not
the
sure
least
if-
used one, I'd say.
I'm not sure if we have numbers back up that's the most used one, but it's definitely one of the very significant ones.
It's more, isn't it more used within different runtimes? Not bare, like Vite used it to power Vite.
I suppose when Vite uses it though, it's a one-to-one process for them. As in, they give it input, they expect the output to behave the same. So it's technically a non-issue. Like I think for the purposes of Vite, we can ignore that it uses ESBuild.
That I don't know how used it is. If we would ignore Vite, I don't know how used it is actually. I only know that like every framework that exists for React right now that's not from Vercel is using Vite. So essentially the whole React world except for Next.js.
Yeah, and Vite as of 5.0 is moving away from ESBuild, right?
I missed that one, but could be.
They're moving to roll down and their other rusting.
Oh dear. This environment is moving so fast.
So the question really is, if the problem is only ESBuild, what are the typical setups that would have to respect Node, and if there's any client-side bundling still going on with ESBuild? And I'm aware that a lot of people use it for that, so I don't know what a typical setup looks like that, but I assume there must be something for Node if that's still a preferred option.
I mean, the thing is like process env node env is handled by pretty much anything. The problem is the second you try to add a test, if process is even there, you get into very weird behavior, because most bundlers will like only do a string replacement on the second part. And the way that the conditional logic is defined right now, it's an and for going into the production build. So if you end up with, I can't pre-compute this and true, you end up with I can't recompute it, and the bundler will not remove the dead code, which is the development code, and bundle both. So until we flip that default from defaulting into development mode to defaulting into production mode, which would also be a major change, anything except for a blanket process.env.node.env without checking if process is defined, without checking if process.env is defined, will all, like in 80%, 90% of cases, will not automatically by default configuration be removed.
In the experiments I ran, most modern ones, even by default, don't replace process.env.node.env anymore. Like Vite, you have to explicitly do define.
Really?
The GraphQL minifier experiments repo is linked in the issue.
Okay.
I suppose that still falls under our prior assumption of if it can be added, then it's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, the type of breaks that, yeah.
Type of works in Vite.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they do a regular expression string replacement, which has interesting side effects because they don't check for word boundaries before and after. So they will also, if you have foobar type of process, it will replace that too and give you weird
Which is the
results.
current bug that everyone runs into, and hence can't use GraphQL after 16.4.
Yeah.
Which is a bug for 2 years now. Has PRs for 2 years now.
1 year.
Is it 1 year?
That's 1
I think
year.
it's almost 2 years.
It was last year in June, I believe. Like we're at the 11-month mark or something.
Come at it from a different perspective. I think last time I checked, there were very
3 years.
distinct and few branches between GraphQL's development and production behavior.
It's only that one check, only the instance of check.
Yeah.
It's really only that one thing. If I may make a suggestion, I would suggest we roll back to the original process env node env without any additional checks, like it was before the global this thing was merged. And we can decide for version 7 to flip the default from development to production, and that way bundlers could minify it away no matter what we choose to do then.
If you choose to,
sorry, go ahead.
Well, if you choose to do that, you will need to notify all the people that are relying on this, which is the guild.
The guild imports this file.
Yeah, and they are also the ones that apparently merged this because their Cloudflare workers didn't work with the process and stuff.
Maybe they should have changed their build configuration.
I'm pretty sure that was merged by Ivan after I pinged him on it because we also wanted to go away from it.
I think it's an issue by Lauren though that triggered it. Let me check.
Yeah, I think there was a lot, and I was the last one to pile on top of everything, and then he was just annoyed enough to merge it or something like that.
So I'm again looking at where instance of is used there, and I think it comes back to if we start the discussion, like if we say we roll back this change, we start the discussion of replacing the whole instance of approach, this problem goes away. Like we're now talking about the second problem that's basically only as big of a problem as it is because of these instance of checks. So if our next move is to field a proposal to replace it, then we kind of solve two problems at once. Or at least we add a solution onto solving these two problems at once.
honestly, it could be very well be an alternative to all of it to replace the instance of check. But that also would mean that we would still need to do something in version 16, because that would be break and change. And we would need a fast version 17. Like we could, for example, decide to just roll back version 16 and say we get out version 17 next week, and everything would be fine and dandy. But there shouldn't be a long time frame between doing another check to another change to process env or whatever the check will be, and a version that makes the whole discussion.
Which part of the break and change scares you?
I guess things that were an arrow before and suddenly are not an arrow anymore are also break and change. Like if you were warned before about mixing two different things, and the instance of check is not only there to warn about two different GraphQL versions, it's also if you put in an object that's not meant to be in there. If you suddenly don't get that warning anymore, technically that's a break and change. So
I suppose
I
I don't see it as a
assume-
breaking change
Hmm.
because it explicitly threw an error, which is actually beneficial now. So rather, we can now choose to, for instance, turn it into a warning.
I don't feel strong enough about it to argue with that.
That's good. All right. Well, I'm happy to write a proposal for that. And then for what it's worth, I still think the other two changes are good. It should be pushed forward, since if you're working on bundling and you've already done it, that gives us a lot of options in, I suppose, future discussions. But
True. I'll definitely clean it up and open it for review. So the current suggestion is we don't touch it for now, and we wait for your proposal, and then we discuss that and see if it solves everything.
I think in the meantime, rolling back the change you mentioned is probably not a bad thing to do. Obviously, it conflicts, but I think having these two discussions going on is not a bad thing, because the rollback will be a lot faster, and that instance of will take more time anyway. Because then we don't have a blocker for releasing your alpha version with the other changes to test those out.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say the rolling back this change will probably make more problems now than it did before. Because in the past, Apollo client would make sure that before the GraphQL package is loaded, and if there's no global variable with the name process, it would create one, load the GraphQL package, and then remove that variable again. We don't do that anymore because we were very happy that this thing came in, and it was a horrible hack, and I'm not proud that ever was in there. And I was very happy that we didn't need it anymore. Like, this might break more people now than it did before. That's what I was trying to say.
I would argue that we might just want to go with the type of then, and just make a big ass disclaimer about how to do this in the different bundlers. Because if you're sure that, well, if this used to break a lot of people and now they bump GraphQL but not Apollo client because you might do that again in the future, and it starts breaking them, you're going to get a lot of issues.
Yeah.
So rather than parallel, add the type of change, collect some information on what people would have to do, but note that this might hopefully go away. I suppose the problem with it is like it's probably good to do that work and to document this, because eventually I suppose we might still have some need for dev time production checks. So
Yeah.
it's good to be prepared.
Just to throw it back into the ring then, as an alternative of a type of a process, my suggestion was doing a global distort process. My reasoning is that neither of those are like really default things that are happening. But the global distort process can be replaced in more cases. I don't feel very strongly about this now, but I at least wanted to bring it forward one last time.
Yeah.
As long as, assuming this sticks around, there's documentation for people on how to deal with it, it's probably good. I think GraphQL is a big enough package to make some more independent decisions on this. Don't
Yeah.
quote me on that.
Really unpopular opinion, but the reference implementation should really not have to deal with all of this. But the non-reference implementations should.
True. Yeah, there is actually documentation on for pretty much every bundler on how to do that, because in Apollo client we have a globaldist.dev, and we have written the documentation for every bundler that was popular 1 year ago on how to configure that. So we could just take that for global distort process in GraphQL.
All right.
So how do we get reviews on these kinds of things? Well, not that I'll have.
Well,
I'm happy with writing a proposal, but I suppose we haven't solved the problem if you need reviews, Lens, right?
well, so if I change my PR to do the global desktop process, it already has one approving PR, and according to the rules, you need two.
So the problem still exists, right?
Yeah, I can reach out to someone to give me the second one.
Yeah. That would work then. I will link you the docs we have. Maybe you can just throw them, like copy paste them over or something,
Okay,
and change that
I'll do
part.
that.
Right, so we should, how does Benji do this? We should capture action items now.
Yes, and then throw them into the GraphQL.js working group issue tracker.
Issue tracker as well.
Well, just the issues of the repository where you PR to.
Gotcha. Yes, I will. Okay, I'll capture mine there instead then.
We'll capture mine, update to update my PR.
And I will capture that as an action item. I will get this clean for an actual review.
Okay.
In the working group notes, or
Sorry.
Where do we write these action items?
Well, I write them in the issues of GraphQL.js WG. Then everyone can see them after the meeting without having to check all of this.
Yeah, there seems to be a template as well for action items on that repo.
I will watch closely what you do, and then I will do the same.
Perfect.
Okay. So I'll just paste the link here in the Zoom chat, so you already have that.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
And if you press new issue there, you should get a template for action items.
This is so thought through. Meeting action item template. Interesting.
All right.
How does one link to a bookmark again? Oh, there. Of course, I forget to give it a title. All right. I think we can close it there, unless anyone has anything they still want to say.
Oh, thank you. That was very productive.
Right. Thanks everyone for attending.
Yeah.
Have a nice
Thanks
rest
much.
of your day and rest of your evening. See ya.
Right. Hopefully see
Good
you next
evening.
time.
Bye bye.
Cheers.
See you later.